The following is an original production of AZPM News.
For AZPM, I'm Mark McLemore, and this is an encore edition of Arizona Spotlight. Coming up, a conversation with one of NPR's true MVPs, Scott Simon. His latest book is Ulysses S. Cat and Other Animals I Have Known. Travel to Douglas to visit a one-of-a-kind place where spirituality meets pop culture. It's the Last Supper Museum. And a conversation with one of the world's most popular viral sensations, an overnight success more than 10 years in the making. Meet Lucy Darling, just one aspect of multi-talented performer Carisa Hendrix's chameleon-like personality. Those stories are all next on this edition of Arizona Spotlight. No one should ever pass up the chance to talk with veteran NPR journalist and author Scott Simon. He has a unique ability to form deep connections with humans and pets with his thoughtful, compassionate, and uplifting spirit. Scott Simon's latest book is called Ulysses S. Cat and Other Animals I Have Known. I started by asking Scott why this was the right time for this book.
I guess because I had reached a point in my life, particularly with our daughters growing up, that I had just begun to get a hold of the fact that the animals we have in our lives, and for that matter, animals I've encountered and have reported on, like in the siege of Sarajevo or during the battle for the Kabul Zoo in Afghanistan, represent kind of milestones, mileposts in our lives. You know, our experiences are shared. We help each other keep pace through life, open our hearts and learn things from each other along the route. You know, I think of animals as our running mates through life. We have been sharing our lives for centuries, and I don't know. It just occurred to me that this was an important thing to mark.
I personally have really enjoyed creating habitats over the years for aquatic animals and hermit crabs and even insects like the Maclay's spectre, a stick insect from Australia. And creating a good habitat for them was it's my form of craft. I don't have a green thumb. I can't grow plants except in an aquarium. And I grow fantastic plants there. So that has always been important to me. But when you have an animal like a cat or a dog, and you invite that animal to share your space, some people make up arbitrary rules, like you can't be on the bed or you can't be on the counter.
Oh, they don't last. In our experience, they don't last at all.
Right. It never made sense to me to try to do that.
Yeah, no, it's shared space, and every time my wife and I have brought a new animal into our lives, what do you think about, do we really want her or him on, on here and all that? It doesn't last very long. You share the place.
Yeah.
For that matter, they may not like it. We have a daughter who comes home from work at the barn and sometimes lays down on our daughter's Daisy's bed that we have near the kitchen. So that she can talk to us while dinner preparation is going on. And Daisy accepts that.
Yeah, the more forbidden you try to make something, the more enticing it is. And so,
Yes.
like for instance, I used to have a cat who would walk around the edge of the bathtub. And I let her do it, knowing one day she would probably slip in. And she did.
Oh,
And
yeah,
that
poor.
taught her a lesson.
And I hope you were there to help her out, though.
Of course, I was in the
Yeah,
bath.
right. Yeah.
I'm a cat person myself. Since I emancipated and moved to Arizona, I've had a total of 6 cats. Basically
God
3
bless.
pairs, but they have overlapped. And I don't ever want to break that chain. I want every new cat to have known the last cat so that they can learn.
That's very nice. That's very nice. We haven't done that, at least so far. Let's put it that way.
Well, it's been a little more erratic, but tell people what your colony of earthworms is called.
Well, our oldest daughter gave them their name, the Slimans. um, which is not to say that they're slimy, but they're slick. They're slick. Let's put it that way. So
Sure.
the Slimans. And by the way, I say this proudly, one is named Arizona Public Media because we name the worms after local public radio stations. So My wife and I will pop the top to put in some, kitchen remainders. And I'll say, hello, WBUR, hello, KQED, hello, WBEZ, hello, Arizona Public Media. And they wiggle back at us. I mean, there are a lot of worms, so we needed a lot of names.
You mentioned your chapter about the animals in Sarajevo, of which you were famous for reporting on that war, and also the line of Kabul. And I found those chapters actually some of the most difficult ones to deal with because it made me think of Iran. It made me think of contemporary times. Share with our listeners something that you learned from your time in these conflict zones about how people and animals are able to say goodbye if they need to.
Well, Sarajevo was one of the most important human, not just repertorial experiences in my life, because I had never before covered a war in a city that reminded me so much of a smaller version of my own beloved Chicago. It was very mixed up ethnically in all the ways of that part of the world and religiously. It was a city with its own sense of humor, a city with its own sense of style. A city where before the war, they liked to hang out in coffee bars and kid at each other a lot. And to this day, although I did a lot of stories about, that sound portentous and important, a lot of the stories I did, none are as well remembered. I think it's safe to say as the ones I did about people struggling to keep their pets going in Sarajevo. They would share their meager humanitarian supplies so their cats and dogs and hamsters and parrots could eat. Dog owners would brave sniper fire when they could, when they thought there was a lull, to be able to walk their dogs, because as so many said to me, you can't explain to a dog, I know this is a sniper out there. Are you kidding? I can't do that. Because the dogs and cats and parrots were members of their family, and you try to provide for them. You sacrifice for them. You do what you can to keep them going because you know that sense of purpose is also keeping you going. And I think that was a feeling that was absolutely kindled within me in Sarajevo, and among many other things made me understand that when we keep animals alive and going in that circumstance, that I believe I say this in the book, that's real humanitarian aid.
A quote from the book early on that stopped me cold, I had to call my significant other and share it with her, was at the bottom of page 15, but the animals we love can take the guardrails off our hearts.
Yeah.
And I've seen that exemplified. She had a parrot for 33 years.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Goodness gracious. Oh, I can't imagine. I can't imagine what that's like. That must be so hard when the end comes too. But that's why we have them in our lives. And as I say, it takes the guardrails off. I mean, I was surprised to discover, veterinarians who are wonderful people have, I think, one of the highest rates of self-harm among vocations in this country. I infer from having done stories, part of it is they don't become veterinarians because they want to see animals into the end. They love animals, they want to keep them going, but that's an inevitable part of their business. And I just think of how many people how many animals they have to say goodbye to, and how many people they have to deliver bad news to. It's a hard way to make a living.
Well, Scott, I want to thank you for being so tasteful in your book in terms of when tragedy does arise, you don't make it explicit. You let the reader make their judgment and move on, perhaps reflecting on their own experiences. But it's important to remember this is a book full of a lot of love and whimsy. And it reminded me with the wonderful illustrations that you got from the New Yorker cartoonist,
Leanna Fink.
Yeah, that it made me think of Kurt Vonnegut. And it gave me that sort of like hand on the chest feeling coming out of the book, as if it's okay, Did you read your own audiobook for this one?
I did, indeed.
I can't wait till it comes out.
Now as we speak. I can't either. And you sometimes think you're on autopilot when you're recording an audiobook, but sometimes I got a little choked up.
Well, Scott, your compassion overflows, and it's an inspiration to all of us. So
Thank you.
thank you for sharing these wonderful stories. And as we said, although maybe in this interview we dwelt on a little bit of the dark side, there's an awful lot of light.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, Mark. Thank you very much. Good to talk to you again.
Take care, Scott. Scott Simon reflected on his latest book, Ulysses S. Cat and Other Animals I Have Known, which is available now from Norton and Company. Collecting unusual art can be a very fun hobby, but what happens when you feel compelled to share your collection with the world? AZPM's L.M. Boyd recently traveled to the border town of Douglas to visit a museum that offers spirituality and pop culture, the Last Supper Museum. Founder and curator Eric E.B. Braverman will tell his story.
Located near the historic Gadsden Hotel on North G Avenue, the Last Supper Museum is entirely dedicated to interpretations of Leonardo da Vinci's famous biblical masterpiece. Eric Braverman, better known as E.B., is the founder and curator of the museum, which houses thousands of paintings, sculptures, carvings, and reimaginings of the Last Supper.
In 7th grade, I declared to the family and friends, teachers, whoever, neighbors, I will never accept a gift again unless it's a Last Supper. Just boom. That's how we're going to get a lot of them. I'm the curator of the Last Supper Museum America collection. So Madame Tussaud, she had a Madame Tussaud 7 Magic Worlds. It was the most terrifying and disgusting wax museum ever created. It was across the street from the Phoenix Zoo. And I'm in that wax museum in 1972, and in it they had the Last Supper. And then it leads to a gift shop, and in that gift shop they had a snow globe, which is out there in a case, because you want to shake up the Last Supper and have it snow. So I got that, and as kids like to collect things, and I collected model airplanes and dinosaurs and stuff, but I had a little Last Supper collection, unusual for a kid. I went on tour with all these rock bands and stuff, and I went to 50 states and 40 countries working. And when guys that knew about this, they'd be off at the thrift store or whatever. Hey, there's a Last Supper down the street. So just start building and building. And then when I retired from the show business nonsense, I wanted to do something, and my wife was like, well, you got a lot of stuff, you have a museum. And I came down here and I saw the need here, you know, the crisis at the border and all the bad rap it gets, and especially here in Douglas and the condition of the downtown. And so it just seemed like the right fit. It's a museum of art, history, and mystery that surprisingly is not somber, and it's not preaching unless you want it.
Callie Ryan and her partner Brian Sirachman say they were visiting Douglas when the Sierra Vista couple found the museum by accident. As an artist, Callie felt an immediate draw.
I appreciate the more traditional Last Suppers from an artistic point of view because they're so beautiful, but then there are the ones that are just kind of silly that just speak to my heart.
I love the Peruvian ones. The Peru people make these little tableaus or little sculptures of it, and they make so many different ones of it and sizes, and some are de los muertos, and we have them that are cats.
One piece crafted by the museum's general manager has a Last Supper display made entirely of cigarettes in place of Jesus and his disciples, entitled Your Last Supper.
That is probably the most photographed one in here. And the Kachinas are number 2, and the Roswell UFO confiscation, where we confiscated the Roswell one from the Roswell UFO Museum. The art, the history, and the mystery.
After retiring from teaching, Brian moved to Sierra Vista with Callie. Brian says his visit to the museum helped foster his inner child.
My favorite thing was when the teacher would say, we're gonna make a shoebox diorama. Although I liked it at the time a lot, I never really thought about it until after I retired. And then I went, that's what I want to do. I want to make dioramas. And E.B., when we came in, was so inviting and made us so welcome. And he said, You've got to make something. And I was thinking, I don't know. By the time we got home, I turned to Callie and I said, I'm gonna make one.
And when he and Brian were originally talking, and it was when I had just started doing these little clay Saguaro figurines. And he goes, oh, that'd be so cool. We should do a Last Supper of that. La. So I decided to make him a Western Saguaro Last Supper.
Brian and Callie's pieces are now on display in the museum side by side.
We joke a lot in here, believe it or not, but one thing that's special is when a very devout person comes over, they get very emotional, or they're looking at it and they see this piece was in their grandmother's house and they start to well up. So like the emotion of it, you know, and the surprise. A lot of people are in here and they're just like, part of the emotion is the surprise of this. What? There's an image in art that every single person is compelled to do, whether they're devout, an atheist, agnostic, a Muslim, a Jewish person, a Catholic, they're all in here. And they all came in, you know, LDS bishop, Catholic deacon, Presbyterian, Lutheran, Methodist, Baptist, you name it. Rabbi had to zoom in. They all said the same thing, even looking at the aliens and the cigarettes and all these things. Said, E.B., if someone doesn't like what you're doing in here, they have a brittle spirit and they need to go to church. Please send them to mine. And then the person there across the way went, or mine.
It's not that it is religious, because there are many, many, many things that are of different religions here, but it speaks to everyone's heart. This museum is a hidden jewel. It may well be the best piece in all of Arizona.
For Arizona Spotlight, I'm L.M. Boyd.
That was produced by L.M. Boyd for Arizona Illustrated on PBS 6. We have photos on the Arizona Spotlight page at azpm.org. You may have seen them online, an elegant redhead with a classic hairdo and a dazzling array of sequined ball gowns, performing magic and talking to their audience about every subject under the sun, especially romance. That's Lucy Darling, so far the most successful part of award-winning Canadian artist Carisa Hendrix's career, inspired by the wisecracking socialite characters from Hollywood's golden age. I was thrilled to talk to this fire-eating firebrand, a close personal friend of Penn and Teller's. I started by asking why, in the 21st century, do men still dominate the field of magic when women are often just so much better at it?
Ooh, spicy. Well, one thing you have to keep in mind about magic is that it is extremely difficult. It's hard to get the basics down. Really, what you have to do is spend some time understanding reality so that you can falsify it. And all of the books that teach you how to do that, and I mean all of the books, with like maybe 2 exceptions, that have ever been written about magic, were written by a man with the assumption that a man would read it. For example, natural movement is a huge part of like the higher level of magic, knowing how to stand as if you aren't doing anything suspicious. Meanwhile, you have 14 doves shoved up your nose, and knowing the technique to do that. Now, unfortunately, you know, typically a masculine body will hold themselves differently. And so you do notice that in magic there are women, but they tend to often, especially in the first few years, you see them wear suits. You see them carry themselves in a much more masculine way. There's a reason for that, right? I mean, they are referencing the source material. So unless you are willing, or that you have a natural proclivity towards inventing things and starting from scratch, this is a very difficult place to be in a feminine body. And then on top of that, I mean, I think in many, many ways, the last 20 years, the magic community has done a big turnaround. It's much more welcoming to women. You see, my junior program is like a quarter young girls. Often a magic club will be half young girls. However, you also see there's still quite a lot of gatekeeping. There's still a lot of men who have only ever had to interact with other men in the community. They have very limited experience interacting with women, and usually also people of color or any kind of queerness. And they don't know that they are harboring some sexism because they've never had to confront it. And so when you show up as a woman, they feel uncomfortable or they have a bad reaction or there are these biases. And, they're not bad people. And it's just that this life has been unexamined because they haven't had to work with another woman. They haven't had to have a female co-star. And so often for me, I spend my time, coaching otherwise very good people, kind, generous, sweet men who don't know what they're saying because they've never had to be careful or notice what they're saying or notice their biases.
I just want to remind you of an answer you gave to a question on stage once as Lucy. Someone in the audience wrote you a note that said Marilyn Monroe or Betty Page. And you dismissed the question and said, it's 2025. We need to stop pitting women against each other. And,
yes, correct.
And that's when I realized I loved your politics. I loved your gender politics. But you give so much advice about relationships to people. Where does that come from? I mean, that seems to sort of be something that comes with the wig because, you have a wisdom about you and the way you advise people when they ask these lovelorn questions. But where do you think that part of Lucy Darling's character comes from?
That's such an interesting question. I believe that my 20s were spent, I've recently found out, I am a bit autistic. And I think as a result, when I did not know that, I spent a lot of time feeling like things that were effortless to other people, interactions I had, were challenging to me or confusing to me. And so I read, honestly, maybe hundreds of books about being a person and empathy and was, truly deeply curious. Like it was my special interest to understand the human condition. And also I suffered from a lot of anxiety and I read a lot of books on how to process my own anxiety. And performing and touring is a weird life. And, I've been in therapy the whole time, just as like a maintenance ritual. So there is like a base knowledge that I, as an artist, can bring to the character. However, because Lucy is built on, in many ways, the work of Dorothy Parker and Eartha Kitt and Zsa Zsa Gabor, those elements were just always going to be inherent to the character. The improvisation, and also getting the balance of when to do it as a joke and when to be genuine. Because you can't do all genuine, you can't do all jokes, right? And you need to be able to tell in the way the question's been asked what the asker is hoping for and whether or not that's something that the audience also was hoping for. And I needed to focus on that. So I took the magic trick out, and the magic trick part of that routine has never gone back in because I realized that it does take a lot of my cognitive energy to read the question. And then two things are happening. I am searching my soul for, the Rolodex of every book I've ever read and what I would say to a friend. And often in my circles of friends, I am the person that is dishing out advice. And then once I have that, then it goes through the Lucy Darling filter. Because whether or not I think that's good advice, Lucy might disagree.
Okay, so Carisa, growing up, I had a kind of fear of circuses and vaudeville and anything that seemed to have that kind of patina of age on it, dealing with entertainment, Meeting somebody who has explored that world on their own and learned sideshow art, were you always drawn to the secrets of the sideshow and wanting to know more about that world, whereas I was running in fear from it?
I think some people go and they love horror movies. Some people jump out of airplanes. Everybody finds a way to practice being uncomfortable. My relationship with sideshow was that. I loved that it was an opportunity to test the limits of my body. It wasn't magic. It was real. And it only works if you're comfortable being uncomfortable. And it was such a cool art form.
The reason I bring up Sideshow Arts is because you had an entry in the Guinness Book of World Records, and that is so exciting to talk to somebody. Tell people what you were in the Guinness Book of World Records for.
I got an opportunity to work on a world record. When you are a sideshow performer or a circus performer, it is sort of assumed that at some point in your career, you will do this. And the record that I ended up getting was to hold a lit torch in my teeth for the longest anyone had ever done it. The existing record was 1 minute and 32 seconds, and I beat the record at 2 minutes and 1 second.
I told my editor this before the interview, and he said, wow, that's about 2 minutes more than I could have done.
Yeah, it was tough. You know, the thing is with world records are like the way people feel about tattoos. Where after you get one, you're like, well, I might as well get 10 more. So that when you get a world record, sometimes if you're very lucky, you make it into the book. But the book is not a complete account of every existing world record. So I am definitely in the book for that, for I think it's like 2014 issue. There's my face with teeth. My teeth got fire in it. It's me. But I am also in Ripley's for a similar stunt. There's a thing called Record Setter online. I've beat a bunch of Record Setter records. A few years ago, I did another Guinness record where I lit a bunch of torches using only electricity being passed through the human body. And that is officially my record, but I have the plaque, but it never did make it into the book. So it's an interesting thing because a lot of people who have world records have several world records because every single time you get one, it's sort of buying a lottery ticket to end up in the book. And hilariously, I won the lottery on my first world record. And then after that was I love doing the world records, but never ended up in the book again.
My guest was Carisa Hendrix, also known as magician and comedian Lucy Darling, one of the world's most popular internet sensations. Thank you for listening to Arizona Spotlight. This show is a production of AZPM and is posted weekly at azpm.org. The production engineer is Jim Blackwood. I'm producer and host Mark McLemore.
This has been an original production of AZPM News.